Welcome everybody. Thank you, Livia, for this space. We had the Italian webinar last Monday. I'm Daniel Weissenberg from Journalist Fund, Impact Manager at Journalist Fund. Just to say thank you to Factanza Media for sharing us all this knowledge and these tips about how to do it better in social media. As Impact Manager, it's very important for us this to think about this, because we as investigative journalists, we are very used to think only in the research and maybe in the dissemination, just in terms of where published the article, and after an article is published we forget about that. And it's very important to share the results of the investigations we are doing in many platforms. It's very important to learn how to use better the social media, how to reach more people, how to talk with them, how to initiate new conversations. So it's very, very important. And on behalf of Journalist Fund, just tell you, many of you, I'm watching the list of people, and many of you are already part of the Journalist Fund community as grantees or other roles, or because you applied for a grant before. But please check Journalist Fund EU. There are a lot of applications, a lot of calls opened right now. So, and if you have any doubts about any of these grants, or if you are already in one of them, please contact us. We will help you to apply and to have more information, and you are investigating to have more impact. So thank you very much, Livia, and it's now your turn, and we will take notes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here online. I am Livia Viganò. I am Italian, as you can hear from my accent. I'm 25. And I am the co-founder of Factanza Media, which is an Italian media company that is based on social media and every day spreads the news and information about what is happening in the world. Today, the title of the webinar is how to use social media to disseminate the investigative and informative content, because one of my missions in life and in my career is to promote the use of social media in order to help journalists to understand how the journalism environment is changing, and how social media should not be seen as an enemy or a threat, but as an instrument that is important to learn how to use in order to disseminate high quality information. Sorry, I have a little problem. Okay. So this is what we are going to talk about today. First of all, I will tell you something more about my experience with Factanza Media and how we work every day in order to build a strong community of young users who are interested in being informed about what is going on in the world. As a second step, I will tell you something about the structural changes in the news world in order to have a broader view of the challenges and the opportunities that the journalism world is facing in these days. And as a last thing, I will tell you which are, in my opinion, the challenges of today's journalists, and I will leave you some open questions that if someone wants, we can discuss at the end of the presentation with the Q&A about how the role of the journalist is different today in comparison with the past. So let's begin. Let me present you Factanza, which is my media company. Factanza was born in 2019 when me and I and the other co-founder were attending university. I am 25, I am very young, I am a very young founder, and this has helped me a lot through the development of Factanza Media, because as I was saying before, when me and the other co-founder were attending university, we realized that our generation had developed habits of consuming content that was completely different from the way our parents and previous generation consumed content. But at the same time, the information, the environment, media, newspapers were not realizing it. They were not going where people were moving. My generation was moving to social media, and yet there was no information on Instagram and on the other social medias that was created specifically for those channels. And we realized that this was an incredible threat for our generation, because we believe that information, first of all, has a social mission. People need to be informed in order to bring good decisions about their lives. And if they're not aware about what is happening in the world, because they don't find the news on their phones and on the social medias that they use every day, they are less aware citizens, and they are not really aware of what is good for their life. So we believed that something needed to be changed. And as a consequence, we decided to open an Instagram page. We had no money, we had no particular entrepreneurial ambition, but we said, okay, let's try to do it on our Instagram page. And this is how Factanza was at first born. Factanza today is a media company and a media brand that is revolutionizing the way Gen Z and millennials get information, communicating with their language and on their channels. We are an innovative startup, and we have built an editorial board made of 15 people. And we, in Italy, in the Italian landscape, we have become one of the most known media for new generations. What we do, in short, every day on our channels, first of all, we select among all the news and all the informations that every day are released by the press and by the news agencies. We pick the news that are most important, in our opinion, to know, to be informed, and have a balanced view about what is happening in the world. So we say, okay, we have 40 news and we pick 10 of them. And we say, if a person only reads our contents, these are the 10 news that they need to know in order to be updated. Then what we do is like a transformation work. So we make this information, this news, these topics, first of all, accessible. So we want everyone in our audience to have all the information and all the knowledge that is necessary in order to comprehend actually the meaning of that news and that piece of information. Second, we make the information appealing. So we ask ourselves how to engage our users, our public, and catch its attention. And then immediate, because of course, we don't have a lot of space and a lot of time to tell the story, to tell the news, because we work on social media. So we know that it is important to be very strict and go straight to the point. As a consequence, every day we contribute to the creation of the public debate on current affairs for new generations. So we became we became their point of reference when it comes to getting informed. We have a lot of channels, and we are almost on every digital platform. Our main community is on Instagram, where Factanza was born, and we have 665,000 followers, but we are also on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Telegram. We have a weekly newsletter, we have published books, and we have some podcast series going on. So actually we are almost everywhere. And our audience is, as I said before, very young. The 85% of our user base is under 35. So we focus actually on Gen Z and millennials. Our target is a little bit different from Instagram to TikTok because, of course, the user base of those platforms is different. So we try to adapt our language and our content to different audience on those platforms. We have actually almost 1 million of followers, summing up all the different social medias and platforms. And every month we reach 41 million of views, and we have 6 million of unique users. This means that considering that the Italian population is made of 60 million of people, one Italian on 10, more or less, during the month gets in contact with our content. Our idea of information is a little bit different under some perspective than the traditional idea of information. It is based on 4 characteristics. First of all, it is deeply educational. This means that we always try to give our users the context behind the news and the piece of information. We don't want to be just a medium, like we say, okay, this is what happened. No, we want to go further and give our followers all the instruments that are necessary in order to understand why that news is important and how to develop an idea, an opinion about it, using, trying to be as impartial as possible. We give you the instruments, we give you the data and the facts that help you understand the news, but then you are free to think what you want about it, because we don't want to give you our opinion. We are also non-partisan, which means that we don't have the typical political connotations that many traditional newspapers have. Especially in Italy, when someone reads the newspaper, he already knows the political side of it. But we want to be far from this tradition, and because we don't want to distort information according to political objectives. At the same time, our information is value-based. This means that there are some topics, for example, diversity, inclusion, sustainability, that we strongly believe in, and they are the topics that characterize the view of new generations about the world. So when it comes to some social battles, we are not afraid to say, okay, this is how we think about it. Our topic everything, because of course we need to cover all the themes and all the topics about what is going on in the world. So we talk about economics, politics, history, rights, science, health, innovation, but we have some topics, some arguments that for us are particularly important, so we try to focus more on them. For example, the relationship between the new generation and the world of work. So how their perception and their priorities have changed. For example, gender equality, civil rights, sustainability, and innovation, and how the digital world is evolving. So sometimes when it comes to deciding which topics cover in depth, we select this as a priority because we know that for our target, they are particularly important. This is the story of our company. Just to give you a little bit an idea of how this kind of experience can grow from the bottom and not from hierarchical traditional media path. So as I said before, Factanza was born in 2019 when we were attending university. And then 2 hours later, starting to build our community, our formats, our contents, we had the opportunity to get an investment by a private venture capital fund that believed that our company could actually change how people were getting informed. We just had a few thousand followers. So actually the fact that we were able to convince the fund to finance us was a very important achievement. After getting this money, we started to create a team that helped us create content at first on Instagram and then on other social medias, as I said before. We were starting to expand both physically because we became, we were not just 2 girls, but we started to become a team, and also digitally because we moved to new platform and created new formats. Then now we are 15 and we have closed another investment round. And we have started to expand our formats, creating also more structured productions, video podcasts, and other. And we are about to launch a membership program. So we want to expand our business, and we are also creating events to engage our community, and so on and so forth. So our we grew up in a very fast way. This is our team. It has mainly 3 parts. The editorial board, who writes down the content, the graphic team, who puts the content into our visual style, and then the market and growth team, who manages partnerships with our brands and help the structure to be economically sustainable. One of the most important things for our company, of course, is how to make the business stay alive and grow without incurring in financial issues, as many of other newspaper companies are doing in these days. So which is our business model? We are social media based, so we don't have spaces on physical pages to put advertising in. We are not on a website, so we don't have advertising banners. Our business model is based on branded content. This means that companies who want to reach our target come to us. We build an editorial partnership, and then we create an editorial plan where the company is presented as the partner of the content. So, for example, there is written that this is a partnership with It's similar to influencer marketing, but it's much more delicate because, of course, we are talking about information. So we have to write down explanations, we have to use data, we have to build a high level of awareness about the brand. It is very complicated because the advertising is integrated, is organic into our feed, our editorial plan on various channels. So there are a lot of challenges that we have to face when we produce this kind of content, because of course the company wants to appear as much as it can, but at the same time it has to be clear that the content is editorial and it's not an advertisement. So first of all, it had the content, for example, the carousel, the reel, the TikTok video has to be in line with our tone of voice and style, because it's not it's not the company's advertising, it's our channel. It must not distort information. So we have to be very, the content has to be sincere, and it does not have to include the information that is not trusted. It must respect the values of the company, which means of the community, which means that it has to be coherent with what I said before about our values. And then it must be interesting. So if a company wants to talk about a topic that is not relevant for our community or is not interesting, and there is no way we can make it interesting because it's not relevant, then it's not a good material for a partnership. The branded content landscape is expanding very fast, and especially in economic terms, because companies are starting to understand that traditional advertisement is not always effective, especially on younger generations. But it is very important that the new medias have, in my opinion, strong values and maintain their coherence when they do this kind of branded content. Sorry, if there is someone who the mic open. Okay. So this was just to give you an idea of how our business is evolving. Actually, there are other things that we are doing. For example, we do consulting for companies who want to build valuable editorial plans on social media but don't have the skills to do it. So we help them to develop content, and also we are launching an educational kind of academy for young journalists who want to learn how to do their activity on social media, and we will do it in the next month. This was like a vision of Factanza. Actually, it's not everything that I want to tell you today, because I think that our experience is just a way to do some reflections, some thoughts about how the world of journalism is changing, which I think is one of the most important things to talk about to people who work in this sector. So there are some limits that traditional media have had to face in the last years. I think that the limits are mainly three: the generational gap, the business model, and the loss of trust and feeling of belonging among their readers. This is something that is especially true in Italy, and I know that you come from different parts of Europe and maybe of the world, but actually it is true in, I think that it's something that is happening almost everywhere. In Italy, it is these problems are particularly evident because our country has a controversial history when it comes to media and newspapers. But I think that you could. I think that you can see how these issues are present in your country too. First of all, when it comes to generational gap, in the last few years, there has been a deep change in content consumption among new generations. It is expanding also to older generation, but it's a bit different because now Gen Z is the first generation that was born with a cell phone in their hand, and they have they don't have to learn. They didn't have to learn how to use their phone or how to use social media. It's like an implicit language that they grew up with. So the way they use it is very, very different than the way other generations use it. People have started to consume content on this screen instead of watching it on television or on newspaper physically or printed. But it's not just a matter of channel. It's also a matter of formats that for new generations are completely different, and content. Younger generations have a very different perception about a lot of things in their life, how their job, their values, the world they live in. They believe that probably their sons will live in a terrible world because of climate change. They believe that mental health is one of the most important assets they own and they have to preserve, while for previous generation it was really, really different. At the same time, traditional newspapers, traditional media, sometimes don't talk about these topics with the right words and the right sensitivity. Sometimes, sometimes traditional media tend to underestimate the importance of these issues, or to to enforce prejudice about younger generations. This is something that, of course, has increased a lot the generational gap and has led younger people to reunite themselves on channels that understood actually the way they perceived life. And so it is actually normal that they lost their sense of belonging with newspapers or television channels. The second limit of traditional media is their business model. A lot of newspapers, when internet became the new normal, moved to internet and build their website. And on internet, there was this conviction that content needed to be for free and accessible without paying. And newspapers started to earn just with advertising, which means with advertising banners on their website, and they earned more money according to how many clicks people did on their article. This dynamic, based on a business model that was not looking at long term, led to lower quality articles and content because, of course, for the newspaper, it became much more convenient to write clickbait article in order to increase the value of their click and the number of the click. Actually, the value of each click decreased a lot. And this business model is not able to support quality journalism. Now, a lot of newspapers have started to to try to make people pay through their paywall a subscription, but since the trust in their quality has decreased so much, it is much more difficult to make them pay for that kind of information. For example, according to the latest Reuters Institute report on journalism in Italy, but it's like the data is not so different in other countries, only the 30% of citizens declare that they trust what they read in newspapers. This is a very, very bad number, a very bad percentage, and it tells us everything we need to know about the traditional media crisis. So I think that these are the main three limits of traditional media that the world of journalism needs to face in order to understand how to make people pay for information again, and how to actually build a trust bond with their newsmakers. This is like the circle of death for newspapers. So they need to monetize more and more from clicks on articles. As a consequence, they make clickbait and low quality articles. As a consequence, readers trust your information less. As a consequence, fewer and fewer people are paying for subscription. So you need to make more money, and this is like a never-ending spiral of problems for newspapers who no longer have a solid business model. I believe that the reach that information have is intrinsic, like has a very strong bond with the social mission of journalism. We don't have to forget that journalism has a sense in society as long as it reaches people. If people move to social media, like it's a kind of duty for newsmakers to move on social media and go back to reach the people. If they remain stuck on the old media and don't understand how languages and formats are changing, they are somehow closing their eyes and putting their head under the sand from something that a cultural change that is not going to go back and to reverse. Of course, one of the most important thing is that for newspapers who want to access social media is that it's not just a matter of channel. Like you can open your Instagram account or your TikTok account, but you need to know how to do it right. And in order to know how to use it to reach more and more people and to build a strong editorial brand, you need to hire people that know how to use properly social medias. Unfortunately, sometimes, too often, in the editorial boards and in media companies, people who use social media are considered a kind of a Series B. and they are not, sometimes they don't have the economic and the economic resources they need in order to actually achieve results. They are understaffed, and they are, as I said, they are perceived as not so important actually. Like the real journalism is the one you do on paper or on the website or on TV. And actually this is a huge prejudice that our society should overcome. Anyway, which are the informative models that succeed? Of course, not the one I said before, but the informative models that succeed are the one who put users' need at the center, which means they understand where people want to read the informative content, the information they have the people need in order to understand actually why that news is important, is relevant, is interesting, and create an effective storytelling around information. Informative models that succeed create quality content that becomes part of people's habit. Is a very difficult challenge because, for example, when my father was younger, going to the newsstand and buy a physical newspaper and then read it in the morning or during the day was the habit. Now the habit is taking the phone in your hand every time that you have an empty moment during the day, and try to see how which content can entertain you the most. If you are a newsmaker that is able to attract people's attention and say, when you have an empty moment, listen to my podcast, go on my Instagram feed and read the latest news, look for my Instagram stories and be updated or interact with my content in order to have a moment of entertainment. And this is like, if a newsmaker is able to create this kind of relationship with the users, he has gained something that, in my opinion, is priceless in today's scenario. Informative models that are able to understand and put at the center users' need and create quality content becoming part of people's habits are able to build trust, a relationship based on trust, and then have a more solid business model, because at that point people will be willing to sustain economically your media or pay for your events or for your subscription or for your investigative research or whatever. And of course, new medias are an important instrument in order to arrive to this relationship of trust. But there is, of course, a but, because maybe traditional medias are not so need to update, but they also have to be aware of the challenges that the new information model is putting in front of newsmakers. There are some limitations that could be instead considered as challenges that the world of information is facing on social media. First challenge, the attention threshold. So when people went to the newsstand and they just had to decide between one newspaper or the other. Today, when a media is based on social, they are not just competing against other newsmakers. They are competing against creators, influencers, the users' friends, WhatsApp messages, notifications on the phone, a lot of content and a lot of notifications that people get every second, and the attention span is fragmented among all these notification and this content. So of course the attention threshold is much shorter, and the newsmaker has to find a way to catch it and to convince the user to dedicate its time to my content instead of the creator's video or your friend's photos on the beach. So here are some ingredients that I think, according to my experience, are fundamental to overcome the limits of the attention threshold and to create contents, informative contents that are really able to catch and to maintain the user's attention. First of all, less is more. Users appreciate the content that gets straight to the point, without roundabouts and with a clear hierarchy of information. It is very important for journalists nowadays to be able to concentrate a lot of information, a lot of content, a lot of explanation in a short space. That can be the space of a carousel, the space of an Instagram reel, of a TikTok video, of a Telegram message, and to be able to make people understand in a few seconds, okay, this is the topic, this is the message I want to tell, I want to share. These are all the main information that you need to know in order to have an idea of what we are talking about. And here is some food for thoughts about the topic. Sometimes just because the space and the attention threshold is lower on social media, people think that it means that on social media, like there is no space for complexity, there is no space for reasoning, there is no space for going in depth. Of course, in terms of space, there are not so many possibilities, but the journalist or the copywriter or whatever needs to be able to express the complexity of the topic without minimizing it, and being very straight to the point and just selecting the right information. This is a very precious ability, and it's very rare. Like I have dealt with a lot of journalists that did not have this capability. And this is one of the reasons why it needs like a proper practice in order to, it is necessary a proper practice in order to learn how to create informative content on social media. The second ingredient is empathize with the user. This means that in order to make a content appealing and to catch the attention, it is fundamental to understand what the user, the reader, actually needs. Sometimes information is taken for granted and the user is not able to follow the logical flow of the content. Sometimes it's not accessible because some the language is too technical or there is not a clear hierarchy in information. Sometimes the language is not understandable. These are all things that keep the user far from reading the informative content. I think that sometimes journalists or newsmakers have to abandon the self-referentiality that is typical of this sector. Information is always serving a community of people. It's not something we do for the ones that already know the topic or the ones who already have already read other articles about it. It's for the ones who don't know anything about it, and still they need to be put in the condition to understand what we are talking about. Otherwise, if the content is not accessible, we have lost the attention of the reader in a second. The third ingredient is building trust. If I am a publisher or a journalist who always publishes entertaining articles or interesting carousels or valuable podcasts, the user will be more willing to give me his attention on trust, because he knows that I am producing content that is thought for him and his needs. Otherwise, if a content is longer, it takes more attention, or the user is not so much convinced about the relevance of the topic, it will be really difficult to maintain the attention. This is why, of course, an editor should be consistent with keeping the quality high. Now, as you might have noticed, I have said a lot of time user instead of reading. I have said a lot of times user instead of reader of the article, the informative content, and so on and so forth. This is because I think that when it comes to using social media to promote informative contents, it is important to think that the person who reads or looks at or listens to the content actually is a person who uses the content for its utility. It's not just a spectator or someone who gets in touch with the content. The person needs to understand how to use that content to develop a more comprehensive and balanced view of the world. So it is important to understand how the user experience of my content is. Sometimes the user experience is very low in quality because maybe, as I said before, the content is not accessible, it's not easy to read it, does not go straight to the point. And at that time, we have lost the user because he does not have a perception of the utility of the content. So let's go on with the second challenge, that is giving the second challenge that newsmakers have to face in the new information landscape is to give something more to the user. This is a very complicated matter, but I think that one of the most important changes in journalist role in the last few years is that information itself, so the fact that something happened, is no longer so valuable, and the journalist is no longer the only way to get in touch with the fact, because internet has made almost everything accessible after a few seconds, because social medias sometimes are the source of information and content, because sometimes the citizens themselves are the source of the content. So the fact that I tell you this is what happened is not so valuable. If you want to be an editor who leaves a mark, you need to give the people something more. Getting the news first is not so much a value. What really is important to build that relationship of trust is making clear which is the plus that you provide, a plus that cannot be replaced by other editors or other journalists. The plus can be, for example, an unprecedented food for thoughts. Like maybe I try to build from a fact that something that happened, a thought, a reasoning, something new that makes people develop a new view of the world. Maybe it can be a quality in that reporting that provides a better understanding of the situation. So I do, for example, I tell something more about context. I aggregate data to understand if something, how much something is important. I create a dossier or something important to go in depth about the topic. Or maybe it can be an editorial slant on the news that is fresh and able to entertain. It can be also something else, but what I want to say is that people want to understand which is the added value that getting informed from you and not from someone else gives him. Now let's move to the third challenge. Know the algorithms and diversify. Today, the digital information is a slave to the platforms. This is something that regards both new medias that are social media based, but also newspaper websites, because of course the Google ranking has become fundamental for newspapers. When something happens, I look for it on Google and then I decide which article to select. I don't go on a specific newspaper to see if the newspaper has already talked about it. The dynamic is completely different. So newsmakers depend a lot on these platforms. And they need to understand how the platform algorithms work in order to maximize the reach. If videos are much more important to Instagram than carousels, than single pictures, than Instagram stories, and I am an editor that works on Instagram, I cannot just not know it and see my reach going down. At the same time,
Informationen am Abend berichten nach den Nachrichten unter anderem über die Zahl der.
At the same time, algorithms can change very fast, and actually they can be a serious threat to newspapers, to newsmakers. What if a social bans all informational content from its platform? This is something that, for example, in the case of BuzzFeed, that you may remember, caused the failure of the company with huge with a huge fall in readers and the clicks. This is something that could happen also to Instagram. Maybe tomorrow, Mark Zuckerberg will wake up and say, you know what? I no longer want to promote information on my platform. And if I am only on that platform, my media is dead forever. So this is something that could always happen. We don't know how it will evolve. This is why it is crucial to diversify the risk and be multi-channel. Being multi-channel means developing a strong brand that can be declined in different ways on different platforms and socials. It requires a very important effort because every platform has different language, has different formats, and has different target and public. So it is it needs to be really like the editor needs to be very aware of this complexity. But at the same time, when it comes to building media on other people, other companies' platform, it is fundamental to have a strong presence on every possible channel. So we have arrived to the last part of the webinar, which is about the challenges of the journalist of today. Some time ago, when I talked about this topic, I thought I used to say, like, the journalist of tomorrow needs to have the skills.
I'm Krista Seiden, and I'm here today to talk to you about getting started.
Oh, okay. So I was saying, some time ago, I used to say that the journalist of tomorrow needs to have these skills, these capabilities, and so on and so forth. But actually now I no longer believe that it is something that has to happen in the future, because this is the present, and this is how journalism has already evolved. And I know that it can be very challenging for people who maybe have already worked in this industry for a lot of years to adapt to these changes, but it is fundamental to learn how to do it. What changes between the past and today for the journalist role? First of all, the journalist has to multitask much more than the past. This means that he's not just a good writer, but he needs to be able to create content, which means maybe editing videos, maybe do some graphics, record audio, write scripts for videos. Sometimes the journalist has to do the job of an author for what concerns specific formats. And it is much more difficult than it used to be, because just one person who does one job has to represent different professions. But it is something that is fundamental, because social media are complex content, require complex content. Second of all, the journalist is not just required to write down a piece, but also to think from a social content perspective and know how to decline that content in different formats in order to reach more people and maximize the number of users that will be aware of that information. And of course, thinking in a social content perspective is something that does not come natural to everyone. Last thing, I think that today journalists should not be replaceable. This means that every journalist has to find his own unique and valuable positioning, and has to, like, the personal branding of the journalist is much more important than the past. This, of course, requires an important effort of understanding how to get a valuable positioning according to the topics of interest, the positioning, and many other factors. The playing field of information makers has become increasingly complex, because the competition, as I said before, is not just among newspapers, but it is also among other social medias and a lot of entertainment content. Thanks to social media, journalists and publishers can have an incredible potential to reach hundreds of thousands of people that a few years ago was not possible. For example, my company could have never existed before social media. In this sense, there has been a democratization of attention. But at the same time, it is also very easy to not being able actually to leave a mark if there is not a clear strategy behind the positioning of the publisher and the journalist. Also, the formats available, for example, carousels, video, audio, required a lot of aesthetic curation that in the past was not required. So, publishers sometimes are closer to brands because they need to have a clear brand identity in order to be recognizable on social feeds. And there are a lot of open questions about the future of journalists and which are the important qualities they need to develop. For example, how much is important the face of a journalist and his capability of storytelling, his voice, his personal brand, as I said before. I don't have the answer for all of this. I know that some of the changes that I told you today are not reversible. So it is a responsibility of media companies to understand how to tackle these changes and these challenges. And this is all. So I hope everything was interesting, and I hope it gave you a lot of food for thoughts. Now I will leave some time and space for Q&A in order to see if there is something that you would like to ask me, or some thoughts that you have about these changes in the world of information. And nothing. Thank you. Okay, so I see that there is a hand from Joanna.
Well, the main thing is that you can hear me. Hi, I would like to ask you something about some more information about your business plan, because I'm actually doing something similar to this project, but in Czech Republic, in Czech. So similar content, but in a different language, but as well as you in Europe. And yeah, what I'm struggling with is the problem how to come up with a sustainable financial plan or a business plan, because I'm doing sometimes collaborations, I'm working with brands, I'm trying to incorporate the, for example, adverts into my content, so it's not something that would be like harshly visible in the content and would be like completely out of touch with the content that I do. For example, I collaborate with, for example, mental health awareness campaigns or European institutions. But sometimes I struggle with the fact that it's really difficult to, for example, transfer some of my content behind a paywall, because with the information I'm creating, with news coverage, it's really hard to put it behind paywall, because I want the information to get to as many people as I can, and make it as available as I can, because it's usually very important information regarding, for example, local politics or global politics. And this is like a big question for me, like how to balance it.
It's really an important challenge, and now our business model is based almost exclusively on branded content, and by now it's kind of sustainable, like we are on balance, or more or less. As I said before, we had the 2 investments by venture capital fund and other investors, so actually our business has to burn some cash in order to be profitable in the long term at first. But as I said, we are almost on balance, so actually it's going well under that perspective. It is very difficult to to create a paywall, but I think that there are some interesting models that could be followed. For example, in Italy, there is this newspaper that is called Il Post, back post, and they have a freemium model. So all the content is accessible to anyone, but then you can decide to support economically the project in order to, because you are an affectionate user and you want to have access, you can also have access to some content that is not accessible to the rest of the users, but this content is not fundamental news. There are some formats, for example, podcasts, there is this very popular daily podcast and other more particular formats that are accessible only to the ones who pay. And also a lot of people decide to pay even though they could have the same content for free, because they, when they are in when there are fake news or there are some things that are not clear, they go immediately on the website of this journal, of this newspaper, because they are so good at explaining things in order to make them clear and to be trustable. And so, for example, in their case, this worked perfectly. From social media to paywall, it is even more difficult. We are trying to do it, but in a few months we'll do it, but it will be in the, it will be a kind of membership. So you can get gadgets monthly if you are a certain kind of subscriber. You can have the priority on to subscribe to our events with famous creator or journalists or intellectuals, for example. So I think it is very important how you shape it and how the value is perceived to the potential subscribers.
Yeah, and can I also ask you how many of you are in your team or in the media team?
We are 15.
15. Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. There is a question in the chat. I will say it for everyone. As an aspiring upcoming journalist, how would you suggest one should begin a news media channel on social media, particularly Instagram, when there is so much competition? I am not planning to monetize it at the moment, but simply build the consistency and valuable information. I think that there are two ways. The first way is if you want to create a media brand like mine, it has to be very professional, and because like there are now a lot of Instagram pages that are like a kind of hobby, and it is immediately clear if they are not famous and maybe the brand is not so clear, the content is not so high quality. And I think this way is very, like, as you said, there is a lot of competition, so it is a difficult way to follow. The second one is using your face, because it is it is easier to build a community if there is like a single personality behind the contents and the personality that people can can build a relationship. It is easier when it's not a brand, but it's a person. In our case, we started very early, so this gave us our advantage, competitive advantage, and we did not have the need to put our face behind the content. But I think that it can really make the difference now in the actual landscape. And also, what is your opinion on newsletters? Do you think it faces any challenges, or one should be aware of who is starting their own newsletter? I think that the possibility to monetize with a newsletter, if you are not already a famous journalist or a famous personality, are lower, because I have seen a lot of newsletters that have a lot of have success, but in a niche. So newsletters that in the States there are a lot of examples, but I don't think that they are a good try right now. Maybe they could be something more that you give to our community, but first of all, you have to build the community, and to build a community, it is fundamental to use the social media reach. Another interesting question. With branded content as a business model, there is no way you can be independent as journalist from politics, organization, businesses, while independence is the first requirement for quality journalism, in my opinion. What is your view on this? It is totally true. It's very difficult, but actually, in our experience, branded content only represent, for example, one content over 15. So it's really a small portion of content, of the overall content, and it does not influence the rest of the content, because we are very clear with our brand, with the brands we build the partnerships with. We say, okay, this is a branded content, and we talk about this topic in a way that is coherent with the way we treat information in general. But if then a bad news about your business comes, we don't care. Like, we will talk about it anyway. The fact that we are partners does not influence the rest of the editorial plan. And in our experience, this has never influenced our independency. On the other side, actually, like the classic advertising business model, I think that is much more influential on the independence of the news, because newspapers know that some companies buy advertising pages on their newspapers. So actually they are, and it's something that happens every day, all the time. So actually they are less, they are deeply influenced with, like they try to avoid certain news or certain investigations about the brands that pay the most for advertising. Also, news agencies have some business mechanism that like they kind of do a service, and they do, like they share information about a company. They are paid for it, but they do not declare it. So actually it's a kind of hidden branded content. In my opinion, declare the branded content that only covers a little portion of the overall editorial plan is more independent than this kind of advertising models. I mean, this can change from reality to reality. Maybe other realities are much more corrupted by the brands, but in our experience, it has never been so much difficult to reconcile independence and branded content. For example, if a brand says, okay, you have to give this information, and we think that that information is not okay, we don't put it. It's like the basic partnership rules for us. And we always say it before the partnership starts. So if they accept, it's up to them to face it. What is another question? What is your view in enhancing accessibility to disabled people on social media? I have to be sincere. This is something that we are not very good at, because we use a lot of, like, for people who have view problems. Our content is not very accessible because we use a lot of strong colors. So this is not very accessible, and we know it. We are trying to find ways to keep our brand identity that has a lot of strong colors without making the content inaccessible. Then now on Instagram, for example, there have been a lot of progress with the subtitles, and I think this is a big step, because seeing the subtitles in Instagram stories or Reels has become kind of like the new normality. So I think that this is very interesting. And but I am aware that a lot of more needs to be done. Another question: if like I give the answers, then if the person who did the question wants to say something more, just to say it, because I'm going in order. If you use only social media, do you produce a long text or not so much? Okay, so I will show you an example of content in order to like be more concrete. For example, oh no, it's not working. Okay, no. Okay, this was a content about the difference between different drugs, because there was this debate in Italy about banning certain drugs. No, sorry, it's not working so much. Anyway, in a carousel you can go on Factanza and see it. Actually, we use 10 slides for each carousel, and there is quite a lot of text, and then we use the whole caption under the slides. So actually, we are able to put in a single carousel more or less 2 word pages of text. And usually it's enough to cover all the topics. Of course, some very long, for some very long content, there is not enough space. But there are other formats that can be used, for example, newsletter, for example, articles on the website that we have. We don't use it so much, but we have it in case of need for support. And then podcasts, because podcasts can maintain the attention for much more time. Then another question. How much value do you put to video production? Is it better to focus on graphics on social media? Video production is very difficult. We don't use it so much. On TikTok, we only use videos, but the curation, the aesthetic curation is not so professional because the platform itself, people don't expect so much curation. So actually it's not a problem. But when it comes to motion video, to cut and paste videos, editing, it's very, very time consuming. Fortunately, there are a lot of artificial intelligence tools that can help people to save a lot of time. Anyway, we don't use them so much on Instagram, only on TikTok, because it's very difficult and time consuming. Is it better to focus on graphics on social media? Yes. I think that if you are a single person face, you can use graphics and some videos, but with a lower level of curation, because it's not so important if you are a single person. But if you are a media brand, then the curation of the graphics is really, really important. And we have a graphic team. We editors are not able to, actually our company is like the best at doing graphics and is part of our value proposition. So we invest a lot in the graphics, but you can have good results also with tools like Canva or other apps that are really useful. And okay, I think I have answers. Oh no, okay. What can you do in a situation where you are in a team where most decisions are made by some group of leaders who have no clue or full understanding of digitalization in the area where you're talking about generation gap? You also talked about multitasking. I simply want to say people don't want to learn new things to grow, thereby pulling others back. If you are in a very traditional situation where the digital aspect is not understood, it is very difficult because like sometimes they just don't want to, like they are scared that the world is going too fast for them and they could be excluded by this, so they try to like just deny the existence of the change. I think that showing some best practice and some cases that other companies have followed. This company has used this strategy about this, let's say, accepting digitalization, and they have saved a lot of money. They have reached a lot of results. They are doing they are true. I think it's because of the same reason, because they feel threatened by all this innovation that is happening so fast. Maybe trying to make them understand that it's not something to be scared of, and it's actually easy to be part of it and learn how to use it could be helpful. I hope. Let me know how it goes when you try. Okay, thank you for the contact, for the accessibility. Are there other questions? Just let me know or write them down. I am very happy that you found this webinar useful. I hope that everything is clear. Sometimes it is difficult to describe by word what we are doing and our content with Factanza, but if you go on our Instagram page, it can be more, everything can be more clear.
Thank you.
I wrote the name in the chat, so you can type it.
Thank you very much, Livia.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for joining. See you in the next webinar session. We will let you know. And see you in the channel of Factanza and Journalist Fund.
Follow Factanza. Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.